The other day I did a live stream where I pondered the question, could horror movies ultimately save the movie going experience, right? Could horror movies, because of their low overhead and the ability to rake in a dickload of money, could they save cinemas? Because let's face it, when it comes to people going to the theaters these days, it's pretty much just sequels, tent poles, comic book movies, things like that. And look, I'm part of the problem too. I fully admit I'm part of the problem too. I look at a movie coming out in theaters and I go, that looks like fun, but I can wait for it to hit home video, which it should do in about 3 months, because that's the average now, about 3 months. But there was one this weekend that I wanted to go see. I just could not find the time, and that was Doctor Sleep. For one, I love The Shining. It's a great movie, even though it is vastly different from the book, and I understand why Stephen King hates it. But as a kid who grew up in the 80s and 90s, The Shining scared the crap out of me and will always hold a place in my heart in that regard. Similar to reasons why I love the 1991 miniseries of It. Yes, it's terrible, but it still holds a very special place in my heart. But Doctor Sleep was one I was hoping was going to do well because of the love that it got and the love of all the other pro Stephen King things that are happening right now. And apparently, Doctor Sleep failed. In fact, according to Deadline here, it's set to lose $20 million for Warner Brothers and a trio of fall duds, but Joker and It Chapter 2 are going to bring home over $600 million in profits. It's not like Warner Brothers is necessarily hurting, but you figure with It and Joker having done as well as they did, people would have gone to see Doctor Sleep. Turns out the answer to that is no. So it says here that finances sources tell us today that Warner Brothers weekend Stephen King upset Doctor Sleep is poised to lose around 20 million. After all ancillaries, should it earn 100 million at the global box office? If ticket sales are lower in the $80 million range, then the loss swells to around 30 million. This comes after the grand underperformance of the mid $50 million Warner Brothers horror production, which a studio which often hits home runs in the horror field off of its New Line label. Not to mention it's a third dud from the Burbank lot in a road this fall after The Goldfinch, which is a reported $50 million loss, and Motherless Brooklyn. So that did, yeah, those didn't do very well. The Goldfinch, that was bad. That was really bad because people were really expecting that one. That one crashed and burned. So, but it's interesting here when they talk about Pet Sematary from Paramount, which was remade this year, and it made over 112 million back in the spring off of a $21 million production budget. And Warner's is baffled because of how well received Doctor Sleep was, with 74% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes and an audience score of a B+ on CinemaScore, as well as an 82% fresh on PostTrack. It just crapped the bed, and I think that's probably a fair way to describe it. The movie reviewed well. It's like Terminator Dark Fate last weekend, despite what people on the internet are saying about it. If you talk to people who went to go see the movie in theaters, it's got a generally favorable review score, and it's got a generally favorable audience score, and it did okay with CinemaScore. So it's like, what's happening here, right? Why are these things failing to connect? Well, oftentimes it's who they're aimed at. To be fair, we are seeing a demographic shift when it comes to who goes to the theaters. And it says here that it goes, estimates figure that Doctor Sleep will clear about 149 million in global theatrical rentals, global free and pay TV, plus global home entertainment, including streaming next to combined production, global P&A, participations, residuals, and global home entertainment costs of 171 million. And no, Joker did not cost 100 million in global prints and advertising. If you recall, right after the release of Joker, Grace Randolph will put out there that there was $120 million in marketing that Warner Brothers had spent on Joker. I said it felt kind of weird, but that came back to a Deadline article that had said that they had heard it was 120 million. Here it does feel that they are correcting that. But this is where you really want to pay attention to Deadline, because they say here, we already laid out to you why Doctor Sleep was in a deep coma. A late-breaking, uneventful campaign, no tee-off to the horror fans at San Diego Comic-Con. It's a 2.5-hour running time, which doesn't work for horror horror fans or exhibitors, the latter who are cuffed at programming the pick. One auditorium can get as little as 4 showtimes in a given day. And that's true. There was no tee-off for this at Comic-Con. At Comic-Con, they had Scare Diego, which did a little bit over It Chapter 2, and it was minimal at best. But other than that, Warner's, if I recall correctly, they skipped Hall H this year. They didn't tee it up. They didn't make a big deal out of it. And that is a place where you'd want to do that. Like, I feel like they thought that the hype off of Stephen King properties off of Netflix and off of It Chapter 2 and everything else would have probably helped really push this movie. But we're talking about like a long time between The Shining, not only the book, but the movie from the 1980s and this movie. It takes a lot. Now, when you look here at the brand equity, this is interesting. It says also the 2013 novel doesn't have the brand equity that it did. Not to mention Dr. Sleep didn't wake up the young female and Hispanic horror-going demos with its billing as a sequel to the 1980s movie The Shining. When it came to those who cited the franchise as a reason to attend, females under 25 were in the last of that category, 18% behind all other demos. Ditto for the 13 to 17-year-olds, 17% yes, it's an R-rated movie, but they still go. Yeah, you're never going to get kids away from horror movies. Like, you're just never going to do it. They always find a way to go. That's honestly one of the things I'm waiting for with my kids is when they get old enough, they'll be like, Dad, take us to this horror movie. And I'll be like, all right, but like, I mean, when I was a kid, I watched horror movies and I had nightmares for days. Arachnophobia, pick me up, man. Anyway, this is where we start talking about the demographics of the Hispanic market, and that is a big one here. It says, not to mention Hispanics, another prime horror movie-going demo, trailed Caucasians 18% to 32% for the same reasoning. Many are also citing that Ewan McGregor's cold turn as the young psychic Danny also softened grosses, with post-tracks showing that he was not the top reason why people went to see the movie. Top influences being genre, subject matter, and King canon. McGregor was a distant reason. So again, if they were to say like this was the Obi-Wan movie, people want to see Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan, which would make sense that then that would have a large turnout, even though I don't think Disney Plus is going to release that information when you look at this. But Ewan McGregor is not the star he once was. This is not the late 90s, early 2000s where he was more of a household name. This is down the road. He's a very accomplished, fantastic actor. But I would argue that really the problem with Dr. Sleep was they released it before Birds of Prey, where he is going to be Black Mask, going to be the villain. A lot more people are more interested, more vested in Birds of Prey because they were fans. Yes, fans actually exist for Suicide Squad from 2016. So people are going to go see Birds of Prey next year. They're going to get a lot more Ewan McGregor exposure than they might have actually gone and seen Dr. Sleep. I know they wanted to try to catch the fall crowd and get in on that horror action, but they released the movie in the second weekend of November, well after Halloween. We're coming into the holiday season. Now, I mean, to be fair, Last Christmas also came out and that movie crashed and burned, but I blame a lot of that on Paul Feig, who I don't think people really like as a director anymore. Just saying, Ghostbusters 2016 can kill anyone's career. Look at Leslie Jones. That being said, Dr. Sleep, from everything I've heard about it, is fantastic, if not a little bit long in the tooth, but that's a book adaptation. This movie is probably going to find an audience on home video. It's going to find an audience when it inevitably goes to HBO Max. And what this actively proves is that when it comes to Stephen King adaptations, Netflix is doing the right thing by adapting a lot of the smaller properties into films. They pay a marginal amount, a minimal amount. They get the movie made, they put it out there, fans go and see it, and the Stephen King fans get their fix. And that is what we're seeing a big draw for on Netflix, is just not translating to the theaters. And I think that's where things are going to go on this one. Like, Pet Sematary is an old enough remake to where it would have been new for the younger demographic, and it was a bit more flashier. Dr. Sleep is a movie that's based off a book that's based as a sequel to a book from the 1970s, right? So you can kind of see how it's like there's not a huge push. Never mind the fact that Warner Brothers didn't re-release The Shining in theaters before Halloween, really amping up that movie. I know that it got a lot of play last year during Ready Player One, where it had that fantastic sequence where they went back into the Overlook, which I loved, by the way. And this is where Warner's really screwed the pooch. And I think, if I'm being fair, if I'm being honest, I think that the success of Joker is one of the reasons why they didn't push it harder. They're like, we're making so much money with Joker, let's just hold off on everything until that's done, and then we'll pick it up again at the beginning part of next year. That's where I think things are. It's unfortunate because Doctor Sleep, from everything I've heard, is fantastic, but now we pretty much know why it bombed, and it just goes to show you that, for one, release dates matter, pre-marketing matters, and Warner's, they screwed the pooch on both of them here. So go see the movie. I've heard it's good. I still plan on going to see it sometime this week, and I'll let you guys know what I think when I do my review. Anyway, if you made it this far, do me a solid. Type in Stephen King at the chat so I know that you made it. Smash that like with the the power, and the anger, and the fury, and the might of 1,000 angry gods. And subscribe, hit that bell. Talk to you all later. Have a good day. Peace out. This video is supported by patrons like you. If you'd like to become a patron, please head over to patreon.com/Matt Jarbo.